This is the Decahedron Podcast with Joe and James, two old dudes talking about RPG stuff. James.
Hi, Joseph.
How was your week?
Quite busy. A lot of cleaning up my desk, and it still looks like a disaster.
Oh, yeah, nothing spectacular this past week. Didn't see any movies. Nothing new and exciting for me. My daughter's coming into town today, the one that lives out of town. And so looking forward to seeing her. And my wife has an interview for a new job tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, tomorrow's Sunday, Monday. So hopefully that goes well. But anyway, this week we're doing feedback. Actually, it's not this week. This is kind of falling into our cadence. I thought we were originally just going to attach this feedback to the episode that we already recorded, but that episode's really long. It's like, well, it started 35 minutes, and I went and I chucked as much as I could, and I got under 25. But I didn't want to add more to this. So just like we did last week, I think we're going to drop this feedback as a separate episode. And we have, 6 feedbacks. We're not going to do the first one from Evil Jeff because he agreed with you, and we just can't allow that on the show, James.
Oh, you're so unappreciated.
No. So the truth there is you left us some feedback about character background, Evil Jeff, and I said to James, I want to leave that one off because there were 2 awesome points that I think these are an entire episode all on its own, and James agreed with me. So I think there's something.
This is a committee. I thought it was a dictatorship.
It's a little of both. So anyway, James agreed with me, and so I think there's a couple topics he wants to talk about a little more in depth on that one too. So Evil Jeff, you will not be hearing that feedback today, but we will do your other feedback. But first, why don't we do the one from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and that is feedback for our previous feedback episode. Let's play it now.
Hey guys, Jason here. So I sent you an email with the page link. The first edition AD&D DMG page 86 has the rating system. I kind of threw 2 curveballs at you. Totally separate thing than the Palladium alignment system. I also sent you a link where somebody has it up on a web page so you can read it. As far as different kinds of games, I like all kinds of games. So to be honest, my favorite sword and sorcery game, my favorite fantasy game really is Barbarians Lemuria, which is much closer to your, story game kind of thing than a crunchy D&D kind of game. Also, I'm fond of ICRPG, which uses zones like you were talking about with Fate. But I play all kinds of games. So, sometimes you want to play a crunchier board game kind of combat thing, and sometimes you want something lighter with a lot of faction play and a lot of role play. So, it just depends on the day. Take care. Keep up the great work.
All right, James. So what did you think about Jason's comments there?
It was fair. I was in a total different track than what he was for the website he had provided to us.
So he said Dungeon Master's Guide. Well, there's 2 different things there, right? There's the Palladium system, and there's the Dungeon Masters, the AD&D rating system.
Yeah.
So when he first said rating system, I thought he meant something like in the old Judges Guild, referees, what's that called? Referees reference, referees handout. What is that called? Anyway, it's a great little product. Anyway, in there's like a sheet that you keep track of players' alignments, actions as they're going along. Did they kill somebody or something? And you determine how well they're playing their alignment. So that's kind of what I thought. You thought it was a different kind of alignment system. And what it turns out, because I looked through the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook when he sent us the first feedback, I couldn't find anything. And that's because I was looking under alignment. And this is not under alignment. This is in the DMG section under gaining levels. And all this is saying is at the end of every session, go back and determine how well the player played the character. Was he fightery enough as a fighter, or thiefy enough as a thief? Or was he too thiefy when he's a fighter? And how do they play their alignment? And from that, you come up with a number. And from the average of all those numbers, you come up with how many weeks they have to spend in training to gain their next level. The reason I would have never seen that is because I have never, ever, that's not true. I used it once, like in the beginning, probably when James and I were playing AD&D at the start. But beyond that, I have never used training for gaining levels. When you get the XP, you get the level. You don't need additional training. That's one of the reasons I think D&D is better than AD&D. To me, it struck me as just a way to take treasure away from the party because you gave them too much. That was my opinion.
Well, there's easier ways to do it, but I'm going to bring up what I found. I found alignment tracking, and I'm going to spell the website out in case someone else wants to see it.
No, don't. Just send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, but it was an entirely different thing. It's more of the alignment chart, and basically it would take all 4 of the alignments and say, okay, was he good here? Was he bad here? And basically try to make an intersection of what your alignment was. I read up on it, but it's interesting is what I'm going to say. So other people may want to look at it, but this was nowhere near what he was talking about.
Yep. So what do you think of the system that he was talking about, the one from Gary's Dungeon Master's Guide?
I'm going to bring it up with the same way I did with our original alignment thing. It's interesting. A lot of DMs just are going to overlook it because they already have too much other information they have to work with, and it's just an extra piece that doesn't bring much to the game.
All right. And what you know what? We will do an episode about whether or not characters should require training. Okay, and then the other thing he's talking about is the Palladium alignment system. I went to the link that he gave us. I read it. So for a faction system, it's pointless because they're not using it. It's not intended for that. It's intended to describe how your character is going to respond, how he feels about stuff. And I guess a point that I never made before is if that's all you're using alignment for, then you don't need alignment. Just say he feels like he wants to protect the innocent and he wants to rob from the rich. I mean, just
Robin
say what
Hood
it is.
again?
You don't need a little label. Pardon me?
Being Robin Hood, man?
Yeah, I was just trying to add a little bit from column A and column B there. So for that reason, if it's not factions, I don't think alignment's really needed. Although other people like it, like I said, and it wouldn't feel like D&D without it. So that's okay.
It's kind of like some of the other stuff me and you have discussed or I've read where there has to be a good and evil, even though the evil are good on their own viewpoints.
And then the other thing he was talking about was Barbarians of Lemuria. I have not yet tried it. It's on my list of things to someday buy because it's not available for free. So I haven't seen it. And then there's an offspring of it called BOL Hack, which is Barbarians of Lemuria, but made more traditional D&D. I think that one might be more what I'm looking for if I were to look at one. But then that always gets me into analysis paralysis because, there's 2 of them, right? Do I want to buy that one or do I want to buy that one? Because they're not free. You can't look at them and make a decision. So you're like, well, which one do I want to spend the money on? So I end up not spending the money on either of them. Thanks for the recommendation, Jason, but I have not seen it yet. Someday I hope to, but I haven't yet. You, James?
I've only seen the cover.
All right, then I think we will play our next feedback, which is, what is it, James? My Dropbox is broken on me.
Let me find my Dropbox.
So, people, I know a lot of other podcasters listen to this. James and I live about 800 miles apart. And so we are remote when we record this. And when we do the feedbacks, we each listen individually. And then later when I assemble the podcast, I'll splice it in there. Mm-hmm. We use Zencastr to record. Zencastr does have a feature where I could put it in as a clip, but that's a pay feature and I don't want to pay Zencastr. So if anybody knows a better solution, let me know. Thanks. Anyway, okay. And that stalling gave me time. It's from Evil Jeff from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, and it is about the OSR.
Okay. Evil Jeff.
Let's give a listen to Evil Jeff.
Joe and James, it's Evil Jeff. Just listen to your podcast with What is the OSR? Like what you were saying there. You might want to give a listen to Rob C. over at Down in a Heap podcast. Look for his October 1st podcast where he defines OSR. And after listening to his podcast, I do kind of get into that idea a little bit more, what he was saying. I agree with what he was going after. Whereas the OSR really is any rule set based upon the TSR era D&D games. And old school games would be those older games, because you can have things that have an old school feel to them. Give it a listen and get back to us. Tell us what you think. Keep up the good work.
Okay, James. So what did you think of that? Did you go out and listen to the episode he was talking about?
No, I did not. I didn't have time.
All right. In that case, you can't have an opinion. I will share my opinion then. So I did listen to the episode, and I will link it in the show notes, of course. Good podcast, by the way. I think I'm going to add that to my subscription list. Anyway, I disagree with him. I think his argument boils down to, I grew up with D&D, therefore the OSR is D&D, and the original creators of the OSR movement meant it to be D&D, so it has to be D&D. That's what I got out of it. And of course, I'm simplifying it. It was like a 15-minute, half-hour show. So boiling it down to a thumbnail loses a whole lot of nuance there. That's what I understood his argument to be. And I disagree. But, this isn't one of those I'm right, I'm wrong things. This is like, what do you like better, Coke or Pepsi? There is no right answer. It's just the right answer for you. And I think some people might be trying to say, no, there is an absolute right answer for what is the OSR. Not the dude, I can't remember his name, not the dude that Jeff was talking about here, not Jeff. But some people I think are getting like that. And I'm not into exclusionarianism. I'm into expanding the OSR to include any old game. Like I said, Traveler, Tunnels and Trolls, all valid old school games, and reviving those in their original versions and playing those. That would be a revival of that old school. So that's OSR to me.
Well, I'm going to throw this out to you. There are a lot of people, and you included, which are trying to create a new game with the old game feel. Is that not still part of the OSR in some way?
Well, there you go. That's the crux of the matter. And that's Pepsi to some people and it's Coke to another. I think I had a blog post at one point saying, is Unlucky 13, I think I was calling it at the time, OSR. And I go with not really, but kinda. And I think that's a good thing to use old school gaming for, which this kind of the podcast kind of recommends. So like I said, I disagree with how limiting he is to the OSR, but he's not completely off base either. All right, I think it is time. Do we have another one?
I believe we do.
Oh, it's another it's another Jason, right?
Oh, I have one here from Joe. We aren't going to include that one?
Yeah, let's play this Joe one. It's his good name. He must be a smart guy. Let's listen what Joe has to say.
I don't know how smart he is, but I'm sure he's a pain in the butt.
Let's give a listen.
Hey, Joe, James. This is Joe from the Decahedron Podcast. I just listened to your feedback episode. In it, James says that the Thri-kreen came from the 3rd or 4th edition. The Thri-kreen were actually in the 1st edition of AD&D. They were published in the Monster Manual 2 all the way back in 1983, and they became a playable race in 1995 for the 2nd edition. You two clearly don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why anyone will listen to your show. Bye.
Well, he was kind of a jerk, wasn't he?
I'd use more stronger words, but I don't know if we're trying to keep the PG rating.
We indeed we are. No, so that was clearly me. And I just noticed that when I was listening to the last episode, I got curious, and so I looked them up, and I thought that would be just more fun in setting, hey, we looked it up, and this is what it turned out to be. I thought it'd be fun to send it in as a feedback.
Yeah, Joseph doesn't let me do much research ahead of time. He wants it to be off the cuff, and sometimes you're just not going to remember things from the right era or when they start a lot of times.
Hey, had you looked up the Thri-kreen, there was no way I would have ever known. But you didn't know I was going to ask, so. I always say that this podcast should be a conversation. It's just you and I talking about stuff. So if you research it too much, then it sounds more like an essay. All right. I think our last voice feedback is also from Jason. So let's listen to Jason telling us our thoughts. Not our thoughts. We know our thoughts. Telling us his thoughts about the OSR.
Hey guys, Jason here. Just want to say enjoyed your What is the OSR or What is the OSR definition episode. Most people I see do it is either a mindset or as a specific group of games, like emulating the TSR Gygaxian style D&D. I like old school games personally more than I like old D&D. So, like Tunnels and Trolls is a favorite of mine. You asked about other early games, of course, Boot Hill, 75, Stargazing, the first sci-fi science fiction fantasy game. I'm not even saying that right. It's not a fantasy game, science fiction game. Anyway, Starfaring by Ken St. Andre of Tunnels and Trolls fame, 1976. So you had other early examples. Of course, people would say, is it Engard is the one that was a really early game. But regardless, I'm liking Joe more and more here, I have to admit, because Tunnels and Trolls is a huge favorite of mine. I don't know if we need Tunnel Quest. I'm happy with 5th edition Tunnels and Trolls, to be honest. I could live with 1st edition Tunnels and Trolls. But the other game you mentioned, Rysis, is another, white whale of mine, a favorite game that just the death spiral kind of bugs me a little bit. But I love so much in Rysis, and I don't know, the copy I have is I think less than 8 pages. But anyway, I look forward to hearing you guys do your next thing. You're doing a great job knocking it out of the park, and great job keeping shows concise. So that's something I'm an abject failure at. But take care. I will check out Tunnel Quest out of curiosity, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks for that, Jason. I've just noticed something, James.
Mm-hmm.
You're James. I'm Joe. That was Jason. And we also had Jeff. It seems that if you're a great podcaster, your name begins with J.
We still have a long way to go to see that.
All right. So he talked about, I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes from that from that voicemail.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go first? And that way it sounds like you're bringing up stuff and I'll cross them off. If you talk about them, then I don't have to say them.
The only one I'm familiar with is Tunnels and Trolls, and I am going to bring up a slightly off-topic thing. It seems like a lot of the early stuff dealt with underground dungeons more than anything else. Is that just the mindset of when the game started? What do you think on that?
We actually have a whole episode about dungeons. It was the second one we recorded. We just haven't put it out yet. I'll just say it briefly. That was the great light bulb that turned chainmail from a war game into an adventure game. It was Dave Arneson's idea. He had Castle Blackmore, and he put caves beneath it for them to explore. And the caves gave you boundaries that you don't have in an open battlefield. So it allowed exploration and containment puzzles, all that fun stuff. So blame that all on Dave Arneson. But Tunnels and Trolls was purposely named to be alliterative like Dungeons and Dragons and to echo the same feeling. So instead of a dungeon, it's a tunnel. Instead of a dragon, it's a troll. And they're still alliterative.
He mentioned some of the other games. I'm familiar with the names, but I'm not familiar with the rules or even much on them. So I'm going to let you go through the list.
So first of all, the most important thing he said was, I'm liking Joe more and more. No, he said I'm liking Joe more and more here. So thank you, Jason. You are rapidly becoming my favorite. He talked about Boot Hill. We played Boot Hill, didn't we?
No, I did pick up a couple of books on Boot Hill, but I never played it. Just never got a group that was interested in playing Cowboys and Indians.
Maybe that was Clifford. Yeah, so Boot Hill, I have the old book. I've looked through it. In no way in my mind is Boot Hill a role-playing game. It is a Western tabletop miniatures combat game. Stargazing by Ken St. Andre. Real early, he says, is the first science fiction role-playing game. By science fiction, I think they mean Deep Space.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because in Stargazing, you play a starship.
You play the ship, not a person.
You play the ship. And your crew is kind of like your hit points. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's a little wonky. It's a little out there. Tunnels and Trolls, great game. I love it. Like I said in the episode he was responding to, I like it a lot better than D&D in a lot of respects. There's 1 or 2 little pieces of wonkiness that get in my way sometimes. Tunnel Quest. Jason and I actually exchanged some emails after this, so I could show him where to find Tunnel Quest. Jason does every Sunday. He reviews a new game, well, new to him, and he calls it System Sunday, and I like that. And he said he might do Tunnel Quest in an upcoming one. He talked about Rhesus and the Death Spiral. I think death spirals are a positive thing. A death spiral. So, are you familiar with the term death? Yeah.
I'm familiar with the term, but I'm not familiar with it in the game term.
Okay. Oh, well, in Traveler has a death spiral too. So, like in Traveler, your combat ability is determined by your attributes, and as you go through combat, instead of having hit points, you lose points from your attribute. So, the more you get hurt, the less effective you are, meaning the more likely you are to get hurt. So you enter the spiral where once you've started to lose, you're going to lose more and more. And Rhesus is like that big time because you only have the number of dice you roll, and when you take damage, you lose a die, and so you roll less dice. But like I said, I think Death Spiral is a good thing because it tells you right up front, hey, it's time to run away. I don't think players run away enough. I think a Death Spiral encourages that. And he also encouraged us on our short episodes. So I will apologize now in advance because the one we're dropping on Wednesday is 25 minutes long. But that's before I started keeping the timer. And of course, this episode, we've been recording for 27 minutes, but we have some stuff I'm taking out. But the feedback episodes will always be long. I make no apologies for that. Lastly, we have feedback from Zachary. Zachary said, I listened to the feedback episode yesterday. Thanks for the responses and thoughts, Joe and James. I will try not to agree with both of you on every podcast. Thanks, Zach. And he said that he didn't realize that Sam was listening too. Cool. Like I said, I work with both Sam and Zach, and I talked to them individually. So when they heard each other, they were both like, wait, is that our Zach? Is that our Sam? So that was kind of funny. Just a nice little email. Nothing really to respond there other than thanks for listening, and we're glad you're enjoying it.
Sounds like you dragged them into that death spiral you were talking about earlier.
Are you saying that listening to our podcast is a death spiral?
We'll find out in time again.
All right. Anyway, like I just said a minute ago, we are going long. We are almost at a half hour. So we're going to call it a day here. We do have another episode dropping on Wednesday. That one is about, the Basic Fantasy Equipment Emporium. We are doing a review on that. And until next week, James.
To the crowd, enjoy.
And yes, thanks for listening. And thanks for joining me, James. I hope all of you have an awesome week.
Have a good week. Bye.
Bye. You have been listening to the Decahedron Podcast. Send email to feedback@decahedron.com. Remember to spell decahedron with a K. Voice feedback can be sent through the Anchor website or by calling 562-RPG-CAST. That's 562-774-2278. Links are in the show notes. Music is courtesy of Kevin MacLeod, logo by Design Cat. Thanks for listening.